back to a new video. Today we are going to see the London system. d4, d5, bishop f4, c5, e3, knight c6, c3, knight f6, knight d2, e6, knight f3, bishop d6, bishop g3, retreating the bishop to g3. Now black castles. White will develop light square bishop to d3. Here there are three best moves for black in this position: queen e7, queen c7, pawn to b6. Idea: bishop b7. Okay, we will see one after another. Queen e7. What is the idea of queen e7? Trying to play e5 later on. Knight e5, end e7, end e7, queen d7. If not queen d7, bishop d7 also possible, but we will see one after another. Queen captures d7, bishop d6, queen d6, dc5, queen c5, bishop takes h7, king takes, queen check, king g8 is only move, knight e4. Black cannot capture this knight because there is a pin on 5th rank. Okay, here the best move for black is g6 after queen g5, queen e7, knight check, king g7, knight check, king back, knight check, king g7, knight check. This is completely drawn position. Now going back, let me show you second variation: d4, d5, bishop f4, c5, e3, knight c6, c3, knight f6, knight d2, e6, knight f3, bishop d6, bishop g3, castles, bishop d3, queen e7, knight e5, and d7, and d7. Here the second capture, bishop captures d7. After bishop captures d6, queen captures d6, d captures c5, queen captures c5. This is blunder. White will lose the game. Black will lose the game immediately. I will show you the variation. Bishop captures h7, king captures h7, queen check, king g8, knight e4, attacking the queen. Black cannot capture this knight because there is a pin on 5th rank. Okay, best move is g6. After queen, we don't retreat the queen to g5. We don't play any kind of moves like this. Here you just capture the queen. After black takes the queen, we are getting the bishop. It is completely free piece and we will win the game. And we won the game later on. Let me show you another variation: d4, d5, bishop f4, c5, e3, knight c6, c3, knight f6, knight d2, e6, knight f3, bishop d6, bishop g3, double zero, bishop d3, queen e7, knight e5, and d7. Here white, earlier two variations, white captured the knight on d7, but now we are going to see the variation with f4. After f4, black will play f5. White castles, knight d e5, f e5, bishop c7, and white will play queen f3, g5, h4, g4, queen f2, queen g7, bishop f4, pawn b6, a4, bishop d8, rook f b1, a5, g3, knight e7, bishop b5, knight g6, knight b3, bishop a6, dc5, knight captures e5, nd4, knight f3 check, knight captures, g captures, bishop d6. This is the position after some more. Let me show you another variation. d4, d5, bishop f4, c5, e3, knight f6, c3, knight f6, nd2, e6, knight g3, bishop d6, bishop g3, castles. After castles, bishop d3, here b6 is also possible continuation from black side. After b6, the best move for white is queen e2. After c captures d4, e captures d4, knight e7, white castles, black plays bishop b7, a4, a5, bishop captures d6, queen captures d6, rook f e1, queen c7, knight e5, knight f5, queen f3, nd6, queen h3, g6, rook a c1, king g7, queen e3, queen d8, h4, knight f5, queen h3, h5. The game will continue like. Let me show you another variation. d4, d5, bishop f4, c5, e3. Some people will not play knight c6. They are very eager to simplify the position with c captures d4. After e captures d4, then they will play knight c6. Knight c6, c3, bishop f5. This is Caro-Kann exchange type of position we are going to see on the board. After bishop f5, knight d2, black will play e6, knight f3, bishop d6. Here we are going to trade the dark square bishops. Why we are not traded dark square bishop in the earlier variation? Because light square bishop on c8, we retreat the dark square bishop to g3. Now the light square bishop already developed and came outside, so we are trading the dark square bishop. After bishop d6, queen d6, knight h4, bishop g6, knight captures, h capture. Now g3, knight f6, bishop d3, e5, d captures e5, knight captures e5, best move knight f3. After black 000, knight captures e5, queen captures e5, queen e2, queen g5, f4, queen captures g3, h captures g3, rook captures h1, king d2, rook captures a1, queen e7, d4, cd4, rook g1, queen captures f7, rook captures g3, bishop captures g6, rook captures d4, king e2, rook captures f4, Queen f8 check, king d7. The game will continue like this. If you want to play this position from black side or white side, you may just remember this variation. Let me show you another variation of London system. d4 d5, bishop f4 c5, e3. We are going to see the variation c captures d4. After e captures d4, black will play knight c6. After c3, bishop f5 and d2, e6, knight f3, bishop d6. We trade the dark square bishop now. Why? Black's light square bishop already developed to f5, so it is easy to us to chase that light square bishop and occupy the bishop. After queen captures d6, knight h4, bishop g6, knight g6, h into g6. Okay. After knight f3, black's knight e7, bishop d3, knight f5. White castles, knight h4, knight captures, rook captures, g3, rook h6, white h4, queen c7, rook e1, king f8, king g2, rook c8, rook e3, knight a5, queen f3, king g8, rook h1, knight c4. This is the possible outcome of this variation if you play like this. Let me show you another variation of London system. d4 d5, bishop f4. Some people will play knight f6. As of now, we seen c5 variations, c5 and cd4 variations, but now we are entering with knight f6 style. What to do from white side? After knight f6, we just play e3, e6, knight d2. Remember, this is one of the London system style, delaying the g1 knight to f3. This d1 and h5 diagonal is still open for queen. In some positions, the queen will come easily to h3 via queen f3 and from there h3. Okay. Knight d2, black will play c5. After c5, always you remember this London triangle like this, from here, okay. After c5, c3, black will play knight c6. After knight c6, knight f3, bishop d6. Remember, here light square bishop is not developed, so we are retreating to g3 square. Bishop g3, black castles, white bishop d3. Here b6. What to do after b6 in this position? There are two possible continuations, which is two good moves. One is queen e2 and the another one is e4 break in this position. Okay, let me show you the starting position of this. d4 d5, bishop f4, knight f6. What to do? e3, e6, knight d2, delaying the g1 knight sometime. After c5, you remember the London triangle with c3, knight c6, knight f3, bishop d6. We don't trade dark square bishop because black's light square bishop is not developed. Bishop g3, castles, bishop d3, b6. What are all the good moves here? Queen e2 and e4. We will see one after another. First, I will explain with e4. After e4, for example, if black takes like this, d captures e4, knight captures e4, Knight captures e4. Bishop captures e4. Bishop b7. D captures c5. Bishop captures c5. Queen a4. Rook c8. Rook d1. Queen e7. White castles. Rook f8. The possible positional outcome will be like this. You remember this position? After e4, if black takes the pawn and trading some of the minor pieces, the position will arises on the board like this. Okay, I am going back. d4, d5, bishop f4, knight f6, e3, e6, knight d2, c5, c3, knight c6, knight f3, bd6, bg3, and castle, bishop d3, b6, and e4. Okay, after e4, some people will trade this bishop. Now what to do? After h captures g3, d captures e4. This is blunder. Okay, knight captures e4. Knight captures e4. Bishop captures e4. Here, white bishop attacks the knight on c6 and the same time pawn on h7. Black, same time he is unable to protect both the things. After bishop b7, bishop captures h7, king h8, knight e5, best move. Queen g5, bishop g6 check, king g8, bishop into f7 check, rook into f7, rook h8 check, king captures, knight captures. After king moves, knight captures g4. This is terrible things for black. No one was able to see the damage of black's position. Let me show you another variation. d4, d5, bishop f4, knight f6, e3, e6, knight d2, c5, c3, knight c6, knight f3, bishop d6, bishop g3, castles, bishop d3, b6, e4. After e4, some people will retreat the bishop to e7. What to do now? Whenever the dark square bishop going back, this is the right time to occupy the space. Okay, after e5, knight h5, you don't worry. After a3, a5, queen e2, g6. White castles, a4, rook c1, bishop b7, h3, knight captures g3, f captures g3, c captures d4, knight captures d4. Here this is the final position in this variation. Let me go back to the position. d4, d5, bishop f4. After e4, bishop e7, what is the best move? e5, knight h5, a3, a5, queen e2. Here g6 we seen earlier variation. Now we are going to see bishop b7. After bishop b7, you just play h4. Knight captures g3, f captures g3, queen c8, white castles, bishop a6. The game will continue like this. Let me show you another variation. After e4, bishop e7, we occupy the space with e5, knight h5, a3, h6, queen e2, a5. After white castles, a4, h4, Here knight captures g3, f captures g3, the position will transpose to the same line. Let me show you another variation. d4, d5, bishop f4, knight f6, e3. Here some people will not play e6. Instead they choose to play c5. This is somewhat aggressiveness in their perspective. We will cover this variation also now. After d4, d5, bishop f4, knight f6, e3, c5, e3, c5. What to do? You remember the London triangle whenever the c5 comes. After c3, black will play knight c6. You remember delaying the g1 knight before you develop the b1 knight. Okay, knight d2, e6, knight f3, bishop d6, bishop g3. We are retreating the bishop because light square bishop is still not developed. Bishop g3, black castles, bishop d3, b6. What to do? The best move here, queen e2. After queen e2, bishop b7. Some people will play like this: rook d1, rook e8, e4, bishop e7, e5, knight h5. This also same type of position. After h4, knight captures g3, f captures g3. The position is completely equal, and anytime after c captures d4, knight captures d4, knight captures d4, c captures d4. The position is deadly drawn. Let me go back to the another variation. d4, d5, bishop f4, knight f6, e3, c5, c3, knight c6, knight d2, e6, knight f3, bishop d6, bishop g3, castles, bishop d3, b6, queen e2, bishop b7, rook d1, rook e8. Here knight e5 also the best move comparing with e4. We will see this variation. After knight e5, black will not capture this with like this, because there is a blunder. After forking we will get another piece. For example, if bishop captures e5, this is also blunder. Let me show you the variation. D captures e5, knight d7. After f4, queen c7, white will castle, knight e7, e4, c4, bishop c2, de4, bishop e4. Position will come like this. White will have a lot of space and active play to the king side. Let me show you another variation. d4, d5, bishop f4, knight f6, e3, c5, c3, knight c6, and d2, e6, knight f3, bishop d6, bishop g3, castles, bishop d3, b6. What are all the best moves here? One is e4 and second is queen e2. Okay. After queen e2, bishop b7, queen e2, bishop b7, rook d1, knight e7, e4, c4, bishop c2, de4. Here ng5 also possible. But after e3, you don't worry. F captures e3, bishop captures g3, h captures g3. After h6, e4, this is sacrifice line. H captures g5, e5. After the knight moves like this, it is completely over. Queen check, rook check, king captures, queen h5 check, king moves, queen checkmate. But no one will not give like this. Let me show you another variation. d4, d5, bishop f4, knight f6, e3, c5, c3, remember this London triangle, knight c6, knight d2, delay the g1 knight development before b1 knight develops. After e6, knight f3, bishop d6, bishop g3, retreating the bishop to g3 because black's light square bishop is not developed. Okay. After black castles, bishop d3, b6, queen e2, bishop b7, rook d1, knight e7. Here one more line it is there, which is bishop captures d6, queen captures d6, knight e5 and knight e4. What is the outcome of this variation? After knight e5, knight e4, we kick the knight with f3. After knight trades, rook trades. For example, c4, bishop b1, b5, f4. Black is trying to attack queen side and white is trying to attack king side. The position is deadly equal at this point. Interesting game will come when you play. Let me show you another variation. d4, d5, bishop f4, knight f6, e3, c5, c3, knight c6, knight d2, e6, knight f3, bishop d6, bishop g3. After castles, bishop d3, b6. After b6, queen e2 and bishop b7. The best move is rook d1. Rook d1. Here some people will play h6. After h6, knight e5, queen c7. Here f4, knight e7, queen f3, knight h7, white castles. Black will play a5. After bishop b1, f6, queen h5. This is completely sacrifice, which is we are retreating, regaining the piece later. Okay, after fe5, the d6 bishop is completely trapped. Okay, I think after queen b6, queen e2, bishop b7, up to this point you remember the line, right? After bishop b7, rook d1 the best move, h6, knight e5, queen c7, f4. Let me show you another completely different style opening. d4, d5, bishop f4, knight f6, e3, bishop g4. Some people will attack your king in the early stage of the game. If bishop g4 and attacks the queen, you just block the pin with your knight f3. Only in this case we are developing our knight on g1 to f3. After e6, c4. This is important move to remember in this variation. Whenever light square bishop is not placed on c8, you strike the center with c4. This is the key point of whole variation. After c4, black will play bishop b4, knight c3, black castles, bishop e2, d4, bishop c4 and nd5, bishop d5, ed5, queen b3, knight c6, castles, bishop c3, queen c3, bishop f3, gf3. There is no weaknesses for black side, and white is having some double pawns, but which is not favorable consideration to win a game from black's perspective. However, this position is equal, but in view of seeing black is slightly better, but it's not practically proven. Okay, let me show you another variation. d4, d5, bishop f4, knight f6, e3, e3, bishop f5. Some people will play like this. They will bring the light square bishop and followed by e6. Later they will develop dark square bishop and castle, and they thought that they are safe. What to do now? Whenever the light square bishop is not there on c8, what is the best move? We seen in the earlier variation. You strike the center with c4. After c4, black will play e6. Here there is a line which you don't worry for anything. I will show you the moves. After bishop captures b1, or rook captures b1. Sorry, I will show you again. d4, d5, bishop f4, knight f6, e3, bishop f5, c4. Sorry, c4, e6, the best move. On knight c3, bishop b4, c4, knight c3. After bishop b4, we play queen b3, asking the bishop, what are you going to do from b4? After queen b3, knight c6, knight f3, black castles, bishop e2, dc4, bishop c4, and nd5, bishop d5, ed5, castles, bishop c3, queen c3, rook c8. After queen b3, black will play b6, rac1, knight a5, queen b4. If knight comes to c4, we will play b3 and we will kick the knight back. Let me show you another variation. d4, d5, bishop f4, e6. Sorry, bishop f4, e6. This is completely new. e3, bishop d6, bishop g3, knight f6, nd2, castles, knight f3, c5, London triangle, c3, and b6, knight e5, bishop b7, bishop d3, knight c6, f4, knight e7, queen b1, g6, bishop f2, cd4. After ed4, queen c7, white will castle and the development is finished. Position is equal for both sides. Interesting play will come when you play. Let me show you another variation. d4, d5, bishop f4. Some people will play like this, Slav kind setups. After c6, you just play e3, bishop f5. What is the best move? c4. Because light square bishop is not present on c8, you strike the center with c4. After e6, knight c3, bishop d6, you retreat the bishop to g3. Some people will trade like this, bishop g3, hg3, h6, knight f3, knight f6, bishop d3, bishop d3, queen d3, nb d7, castles, c5, queen c7. After e4, d captures e4, knight captures, queen captures, knight f6, queen c2, rook fd8, rook fe1. The position is completely equal. No weaknesses for both sides. Let me show you another variation. d4, d5, bishop f4. Some people will play like this, bishop f4, bishop f5, e3, e6. They are copying the position same. After c4, bishop captures b1. Here there is two moves to capture the b1 bishop. One is rook captures b1 and second is queen captures b1. Out of these two moves, the best move is queen captures b1. After bishop b4 check, you don't worry about the castling, right? Okay, you just play king d1. It is the best move in this position. After bishop d6, bishop g3 we are retreating, and knight f6, c captures d5, knight captures d5, knight f3, c5, bishop b5 check, knight c6, king e2. We are going back and we are bringing the rook, and again our king is going to safety square. After king e2, black castles like this. After bishop c6, bc6, dc5 and bishop captures c5, e4, knight f6, rook c1, queen b6, king f1. After knight h5, bishop c7, queen a6 check, king g1, bishop e7. The position will come like this. This is completely drawn position. White lost the right of castling, but his king is safe. There is no weaknesses, no material loss for both sides. You can play any side of this position. And this is part 1 London system. We discussed some of the interesting positions for both sides. Thank you guys.